and loaded for a very comprehensive wall-to-wall, wire-to-wire coverage of the senatorial by-election in Migori. We'll be joined by Bernard Ojwang in Awendo, Oko Kusa in Uriri, and also Seth Olale in Migori, all in the great county of Migori, where IBC officials say they are ready for the more than 300,000 residents in 8 constituencies who head to the polls this morning. That will be much later in the course of the program. So we'll be joined by our panelists, of course, here, who we are eagerly waiting for them to join us much later in the course of the program today. We'll be joined by Dr. Shemo Chodo, who is a global leader, of course, actually secondly, I can just see him. He's just coming. He's a global leader of Kenya Diaspora Lands, and also be joined much later by the senator of Nyamira. This is, we'll be joined actually by Okongo Omogeni and other panelists as well, Anyang Nyong'o, who will be here momentarily. But we want to drill deeper and see what also has been the tone and tenor of the politics of the week that has been, looking at the referendum as well. That will be much later in the course of the program. So let's head over to our Twitter handle, which is AM Live NTV. AM Live NTV is our profile name on Facebook, and 20686 our SMS portal. There, of course, we know the biggest debate has been now whether we should be going for referendum or not. And people have been changing tones, speaking from both sides of the mouth. We shall be looking at the implications of this and where is it headed. Is it another just head being backed on the wall of this time forth? This leaders are really serious about the referendum. So we want to hear what you think. What do you reckon? You can hit us on Twitter. As I mentioned, AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle, AM Live NTV, your profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. But for now, we see the good, the bad, and the ugly in our dailies today. And this is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. I will head over there just to fix it for you, because what I do have is Taifa Leo, and it says Obado ampa Raila wasiwasi. It says this is Taifa Leo. Licha ya kuwa korokoroni kwa kushukiwa kuua, gavana wa Migori atishia kuaibisha Baba Nyanza. And this is in light of what we're talking about with the senatorial seat that is in Migori. But let's see what the Daily Nation is holding for us. And this is what you're waking up to today. Inside Kidero Empire, I should say, it's all about corruption. 200 million shillings in one bank account, 6 Mercedes cars in the garage. This man is doing well. This is the spotlight from a grand home on the same street as Mwai Kibaki, should say, in Muthaiga, Nairobi, to a block of high-end flats next door to State House. Court filings begin to reveal the incredible wealth of former Nairobi governor. He says he's a smart investor. EACC claims he stole it all. And this story continues on page 2 of the Daily Nation today. And of course, we can see, former Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero on September the 20th, moments after detectives from the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission left his office located in Eldamar Park on Eldamar Ravine Road, Nairobi, with evidence gathered from a search warrant for his home and offices. This is what is on the front page of the Daily Nation today. Also, today is when we get to hear the hearing in the court of Jackie Maribe. And it says here, my girl is guilty of love, not murder, as Mr. Mwangi Maribe battles to save his daughter from a long prison sentence, if not worse. DCI boss George Kinoti is starkly categorical. Jackie will face a murder charge when she and her boyfriend Joseph Joey Rongo are taken to court this week. This story, you can follow it on page 8 and 9 of the Daily Nation this morning. A quick look also at what we have on the front page of the Standard, and this is what you're waking up to. It says, we are ready, but it will cost you billions. We are ready, but it will cost you billions. Ballot verdict. With political consensus building in favor of a third national plebiscite on the Constitution, and despite leaders being divided on what should be the main referendum question, Chebukati declares IBC is ready but needs 12 billion billion shillings to pull it off. This story continues on page 6 of the Standard today. Also still on the front page of the Standard, Bridget Kosgei is a new Chicago Marathon star. Kenya wins women's title in 2 hours, 18 minutes and 35 seconds. Also a personal best. Breakthrough victory comes after runner-up showings in Chicago last year. And in London this year, she was among 7 African runners that pulled ahead by more than 70 seconds after the first 5 kilometers. You can find that inside the Standard this morning. Western leaders fury with Raila. Musalia's ANC and Wetangula's Ford Kenya reacts angrily to proposals to kick members out of committees of parliament, terming Raila's move dictatorial, I should say, and an insult to coalition members. That story is tucked away on page 12 of the Standard this morning. A quick look now at what we have on the front page of the Star. Raila, Orengo fight to control Nyanza. This is what we have as a splash. Ferocious battle for heart of ODM stronghold breaks out ahead of 2022. 2 factions emerge following uncertainty about Odinga's political future. This story on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. And you can see the faces also splashed here on the front page of the Star. For Raila, Gladys Wanga. For Raila, also Janet Mohammed. For Raila, John Birdie. And for Orengo, Millie Odhiambo. For Orengo, TJ Kajwang. And for Orengo, Peter Kalumba. Also, Kidero denies he owns 13 parcels listed by Watchdog. Sosion claims state wants to top NAT officials out. Also, ESCC probes 10 accounts linked to 1.2 billion shillings payout. That is another story that you want to follow also inside the Star this morning. Also, cheap power is on the way, says Qatar. The government will reduce power tariffs so low. Or it says the government will reduce power tariffs so low-income earners can enjoy benefits of a last-mile connectivity project. Energy CS Charles says more reasonable charges will be announced by President Uhuru Kenyatta within a week, and they will be cheaper than kerosene. Referendum will not derail Big Four. This is what DP Ruto is saying. A proposed referendum will not distract the government from its development agenda, DP William Ruto has said. Speaking in Meru yesterday, Ruto appeared to soften his opposition to fundamental constitutional change but urged caution. That story continues on page 8 of the Star this morning. Also, you can read about Sudan's blood money fueling Kenya banks. That is the story on page 21 by Samuel Kimeu, all the voices inside the Star. Let's move on to see what we have on the front page of the People Daily. And this is what you're waking up to this Monday. Human trafficking. Kenya caught up in 15 trillion shillings web. In an in-depth expose, People Daily's reporter Rebecca Motiso comes face-to-face with the scars, pain of thousands of minors and young women who have fallen prey to evil of a thriving multi-trillion shilling modern-day slave trade driven by faceless, callous sex merchants across the globe. This story continues on page 4 and 8 of the People Daily. Also, Migori voters go to poll to pick senator in by-election. That is tucked away on page 9 of the People Daily. House team moves to regulate land prices. This far-reaching proposal is among a raft of constitutional changes, including 7-year single term for president being pushed by Finance Committee. And that story continues on page 13 of the People Daily this morning. Let's move on and see what we have also on the front page of the Business Daily. And this is your splash this morning on the front page of the Business Daily. Tougher new payment rules to protect suppliers. Move aims to cut average payment period in the sector to 30 days from the current 180 to 240. That is what we have on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Also, airports regulator entangled in land rows, I should say. The Kenya Airports Authority is entangled in an ownership dispute involving 85 parcels of land, including 46 title deeds at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily. Also, winning pace. Kevin Kiptum battles it out with other athletes in the leading pack on his way to winning the 12th Family Bank Half Marathon in Uasin Gishu County yesterday. Half Marathon world record holder Jocelyn Jepkoskei won the women's race. That also you can find it inside the Business Daily. Also, NSE foreign investors' fortunes in sharp fall. The Nairobi Security Exchange foreign investors' fortunes swung sharply for the worse in the past 1 month as dollar-dominated returns turned negative with a fall in share prices and a slight weakening of the shilling. Latest market data shows, and you can follow all those details also on page 4 of the Business Daily. Let's look at the ticker, what it has for us there. Fight over Koinange. 10 billion shillings estate ends. The battle for control for former Cabinet Minister Peter Mbiu Koinange's estate has finally been put to rest after the Supreme Court ruled that former President Mzee Jomo Kenyatta's confidant had 4 wives who should inherit his 10 billion shillings empire. That is on page 6 of the the Business Daily. Also the digits, 85 billion shillings level, or the current account deficit stood at in June, that is on page 19. This is all on corporate news. Migori gold mine license sparks also row. The government has awarded Chinese firm Bao Gold Hill Limited license to prospect for gold in Migori, sparking protest from London-based Goldplat, which says the zone was hived off from its staff. That story continues on page 7 of the Business Daily. Current account deficit narrows. The current account deficit narrowed by a third in the quarter to June compared to a similar period last year. A signal that the Kenyan shilling was now less exposed to vagaries of global markets. That is on page 19 of the Business Daily this morning. We cross over now to Tanzania, where we have the citizen Al Muhas lost the Mlangonzila dream. Teaching hospital now under MNH after reversal of an earlier plan where it was to have been placed under Muhimbili University of Health and Allied Sciences. And this story continues on page 5 of the Citizen. The year President John Magufuli officially opened the Mlangonzila Academic Medical Center. That is 2017. And you can follow this story inside the Citizen in Tanzania. Also, manufacturers get 3 months or 3-month grace period on ETS rollout is another story on page 2. And survey grows from strength to strength. Citizen and Mwananchi newspapers brings you a series of articles in the run-up to the Tanzania top 100 mid-sized companies survey gala dinner scheduled for later this month in Dar es Salaam. You can find all the details on page 4 of the Citizen. Also, new TPSF chairman's 5 priorities. The new chairman for Tanzania Private Sector Foundation, Salum Shamte, will prioritize 5 key issues as he seeks to play a key role in fostering dialogue between members of the business community and the government for the sake of improving the country's business climate. This story continues on page 2 of the Citizen in Tanzania. We have Mwananchi as well there. Panga la watumishi hewa latua CCM. Panga la watumishi hewa latua CCM. That is the splash today. Chama hicho tawala kinahakika watumishi wake wote nchini. Hicho tawala, or chama hicho tawala kinahakiki, I should say, watumishi wake wote nchini. It makes sense now. And that is what is on the front page of Mwananchi. You can follow the story inside there. Let's see what we have on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. Moving from humanitarian mindset to investment is key. This is what Kagame says. President Paul Kagame has said that the African Union reforms and initiatives are picking up pace and having significant impact towards the transformation of the organization and the continent. Kagame was speaking at the Mo Ibrahim Foundation board meeting in London, which was attended by a number of current and former heads of state and government, as well as eminent persons from across the continent. And you can see a related picture here. We have former Ethiopia Prime Minister Hailemariam Desalegn, former Liberia President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Mo Ibrahim, President Kagame, and former Botswana President Festus Mogae at the Mo Ibrahim Foundation board meeting in London. Also, new penal code to sanction institutions for genocide crime is another story that you want to follow on page 18 of the New Times in Rwanda. Let's see what we have also on the front page of the People Daily. Not really the People Daily. I hope to actually pick it for you. That is the Daily Monitor in Uganda. The Daily Monitor in Uganda. There you go. Over 150 Ugandans deported from Dubai. 3 of those on the list are serving life sentences in the United Arab Emirates for drug trafficking, while 11 of them are women. Government negotiated for their deportation. This story continues on page 2 of the People Daily. Let's see what it says there. A total of 154 Ugandans have been deported from the United Arab Emirates after protracted negotiations by the Ugandan embassy in Abu Dhabi. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs spokesperson has revealed. Mr. Moses Kasuja told Daily Monitor that some of the deportees had committed offences and were serving jail sentences. There are more than 30,000 Ugandans working and living in the UAE, minus those staying there illegally. You can follow that story on page 2 also of the Daily Monitor. Let's see what the East African is holding for us this week. Hard times ahead as oil nears 100, that is $100 a barrel. Break on the economy. The current price, the highest since 2014, will climb further with Iran sanctions. That is what we have on the front page of the East African this week. Regional court also declines governor's plea on Mao. Pupils allegedly denied rights to food, shelter, health and education. The East African Court of Justice has put off a case by a Kenyan governor seeking orders to compel the country's Ministry of Education to provide temporary school facilities for 5,000 pupils evicted from the water tower in the Rift Valley region until the government is represented. Kericho Governor Paul Chepkwony had argued that pupils from 23 primary schools had been denied their basic rights to food, shelter, health facilities and education after being evicted from the Mao complex. You can follow this story where you have a full report on page 3 of the East African this week. Let's see finally what we do have as the editorial cartoons as well in our dailies. And this is what we do have as editorial cartoons. A quick look at what we have in the Daily Nation according to IGA. Right, this is maize payments and cartels. This is what IGA has done for us inside the Daily Nation today. You can grab a copy of that and see what he has done. That is the Daily Nation. And this is what Stano has done for us as well. This is in the People Daily. Which parts do we amputate? And this is NASA and Jubilee right now, and the Constitution, which is just about to be amputated. This is in light of what the debate is all about, the referendum, X-ray, Constitution of Kenya. Right, so this is a concerted effort of the Jubilee and NASA. I am so young, why now? That is what the Constitution is asking. Let's see what we have also in the Star, and this is what has been drawn by Victor. You can grab a copy of the Star on page 2, you'll find this. Deputy Ruto makes his stand on the referendum absolutely clear. That is what we have also on page 2. That is Deputy Ruto's socks and his shoes, and of course they are facing every which way. I'll leave it for you to decipher, and this is what our cartoonists have drawn for us this morning. Lastly, let's see what we have from the archives. We show you this particular picture, and this is Dr. Julia Ojambo. Ugandan First Lady Janet Museveni is given a warm welcome at Nairobi Intercontinental Hotel by a former Kenyan Assistant Minister, Dr. Julia Ojambo, where she attended a lunch hosted for her by members of the Nairobi International Christian Women Association. That is from our archives. So make sure you grab a copy of the dailies that tickles your fancy for these riveting stories as well. But for now, we're swinging for the fences by looking at the highlights. It is called for ceasefire as referendum debate gathers momentum. Desmond Tutu spends 87th birthday in hospital. Well, polls close in Cameroon after vote marked by separatists. Rest. Orange Democratic Movement senatorial by-election candidate Ochilo Oyako has raised security concerns in Kuria West constituency, saying there is a possibility of violence meant to disrupt today's voting exercise. Meanwhile, IBC says all preparations are complete and are urging all registered voters in Migori County to come out and exercise their constitutional right.
The former Energy and Gender Minister raised the alarm on possible election violence in Kuria West constituency with just a few hours remaining to the Migori senatorial by-elections.
But as long as it ultimately is decided by the individual voter, I think it's still a fair game. Unless the involvement of external forces is to the extent of rigging, or is to the extent of voter fraud or manipulation, that is what would be unacceptable.
The ODM candidate is confident about his chances of clinching the vacant seat and has urged his supporters to maintain peace during and after the polls, sentiments shared by all the contestants for the position, which fell vacant in June following the demise of the then Senator Ben Oluoch. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, was in a last-minute rush, dispatching voting material from the county tallying center at Migori Teachers Training College to the registered polling stations in all the 8 constituencies in Migori County.
Kama tume ya IEBC tumejitayarisha vilivyo na tumepeleka vifaa vya kupiga kura hadi vituo vya kupigia kura. Na hivi sasa waafisa wa IEBC ambao watashughulikia hiyo kazi kesho wote wanaelekea sehemu za kupigia kura, na tunatarajia kabla saa 6 usiku watakuwa wamewasili karibu wote.
About 388,000 registered voters are expected to choose a new senator on Monday when the polls open at 6 a.m.
Yeah,
the contest is largely perceived to be a two-horse race between Ochilo Oyako of ODM and Eddie Okech of the Federal Party. Security has been bolstered with 1,000 officers on duty.
It has been gruesome, it has been tiring, it has been long and exhausting, but the hour of reckoning is about to arrive, and we'll get it over with. I am optimistic that we'll emerge victorious as a party, that is ODM party and myself, and I look forward to serving the people of Migori as their senator for the remainder of this parliamentary term.
Right, we shall be following that for you. Our reporters are there on the ground. We'll give you a wall-to-wall, wire-to-wire coverage of the senatorial by-election in Migori. We have our reporters on the ground. Meanwhile, Murang'a County leaders and residents have welcomed President Uhuru Kenyatta's position on the Murang'a water wars, calling on leaders to stop politicking about the matter and urging them to hold a structured dialogue to solve locals' concerns. They exuded confidence that talks between Murang'a County leaders, Nairobi County leaders and the national government will arrive at a solution.
Naomba viongozi tuache siasa ya maji. Maji ni kipeo cha Mwenyezi Mungu kwa wananchi wake.
Water is mine as a county governor, and I want to repeat that this 25% we must sit down and discuss.
Sisi wakaaji wa Murang'a tunasema ni kweli tuko supposed kulipa pesa za maji. Hatutabaduka, hatubaduki.
Ile inatakikana ni sisi tuje pamoja, tujue tutayatumia kwa njia gani kwa manufaa ya wananchi wa Kenya. Hii rasilimali ni yetu sisi wote.
Mheshimu sana rais wetu, na ni kweli alisema maji ni natural resource, na kwa hivyo sisi tunamheshimu na tunashukuru. Lakini ni vizuri watu wa Murang'a kwanza wakunywe maji, wawe na maji kwao, na pia ile maji ya Nairobi tukitisha vitu kwa tujakufia sana. Because water is the oil of Rwanda.
Na tunawaambia CS, tutawapatia siku 2 au siku 3 wapate mkutano, wakuje kwenye kaunti ya Murang'a, wakae chini na viongozi na watu wa Murang'a watuambie wamepanga mikakati gani ili kupatia watu wa Murang'a maji.
Viongozi wa Murang'a na viongozi wa Nairobi, viongozi wa Athi Water na kampuni za maji za hapa Murang'a tuweze kukaa chini ili tusikizane ya kwamba hii maji ikuwa inasaidia wakazi wa Nairobi na pia wakazi wa Murang'a.
Hii maji wanatoa Murang'a hawapeani bure, wanalipisha. Kwa hivyo let them give Murang'a County something.
Now, polls in Cameroon closed at 6 p.m. local time on Sunday after a mostly calm day of voting, but a drive-by successionist to disrupt the election meant not all polling stations were open in English-speaking regions where voter turnout was low due to security fears. The county saw isolated incidents of unrest in separatist Anglophone regions during voting. course, having a conversation on the referendum and a raft of other issues as far as also Migori is concerned. Today is a big day for them, and remember, we're covering that for you. We're there, and we'll be giving you a wall-to-wall, wire-to-wire coverage of what is happening in Migori County as far as senatorial election is concerned. But only after a few acrimonious elections, the country is increasingly getting electrified by politicians running around campaigning for the 2022 presidency. But doing so under the guise of initiating developmental projects. Already, we know this is on a wrong premise. Already the air is getting polluted, and any visitor will be excused for thinking the elections are just around the corner in Kenya. It is simply being insensitive to the needs and feelings of voters who are hurting, having gone through a gruesome electioneering and contested outcomes of the presidential polls that left this country divided right down in the middle. This is the reason we reinforce President Uhuru Kenyatta's declaration that politicians should stop the endless political campaigns that are raising temperatures and consuming energies that would otherwise be spent on productive ventures. It cannot be that ours is a country where campaigns begin immediately after an election is concluded. An election is not an end, it is a means. For the citizens, an election is a chance to make decisions on who should be trusted with steering the country's development agenda. But it cannot be that we are put in a perpetual election mode. People are fatigued and deserve relief. Two issues have now come to dominate political discourse. One is campaigns for the 2022 elections, with the contenders emboldened by the fact that incumbent President Kenyatta is exiting the stage. The second is the call for a referendum on the constitution, which, though cloaked under the pretext of creating legal and policy changes, is actually a roundabout way also to the 2022 elections. And we are joined this morning by Okongo Omogeni, who is Senator of Nyamira. We do have with us as well the Governor of Tharaka Nithi. This is His Excellency Muthomi Njuki. We have with us as well the Senator of West Pokot. This is Samuel Pugisio. We do have with us Dr. Shemo Chodho, who is a global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance, and also we have the Governor of Kisumu. This is Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
Right, a big day for Migori. I don't know what will be your looking at your crystal ball, or actually what will be your projection today. Maybe we can begin with Dr. Shemo Chodho. Looking at all these dynamics and of course hearing of the sentiment from Chilo Ayako as well, what would you say?
Debarl, I have two of my friends battling it out, Honorable Chilo Ayako and Eddie Okech.
Yes.
They're both very able Kenyans, but I think it's Honorable Ayako's to lose for a number of reasons. But at the same time, I think the youth... It
is for him to lose. Why?
I think the party machinery is in his favor. He's an older brand, experienced and known. But I think the freshness I'm seeing in Eddie is also very encouraging. It's not going to be a walkover. But of course, one cannot rule out the Obado factor in all this, despite the fact that he's incarcerated. But whoever wins, I wish them well. I just hope that it will all be peaceful and that there'll be no rigging and no violence of whatever nature. So I wish them well. I wish the voters well. I hope they all turn up in large numbers and exercise their right.
All right. Muthomi Njuki, your crystal ball?
Well, I really wish Migori voters really the best in what he wished to get in terms of the senator. However, I'm a bit disappointed with what was insinuated on the young man Eddie when some people decided to have some propaganda that is backed up by the deputy president, just to make the country, I mean the county be divided in form of who is pushing the voters in what direction. I mean, they can be allowed to make independent decisions without having to be marooned in national politics that pitting Raila Odinga and William Ruto in the presidency in 2022. It's not really necessary.
It's not necessary.
Yeah.
All right. Okongo Omogeni, good morning.
Morning.
Yes.
Debarl. Yeah. I think the bigger picture in Migori is that democracy is taking roots. I think in previous years, there is no way somebody could have even had a dream of waging a very strong challenge on an election where a party like ODM has fielded a candidate. So we give it to the people of that county that they have given this young man a chance to also put a very strong fight in the elections. But I think Ochilo Ayako is a fairly experienced politician, yes, having served in Parliament in the early 2000s for 2 terms, former cabinet minister. He's got the support of ODM, which I think has a very strong presence in Migori County. The only trick is that he has 2 constituencies which traditionally don't vote with ODM. That is Kuria East and Kuria West. And I think if the voter turnout is fairly good from Kuria West, then there should be a fight. But I think Ochilo should bag it.
Right.
Should bag it.
Okay, let's hear from Pogisio. Good morning.
Good morning. And just to say, I think the 2 things that I like to talk about is the violence. Really, this is the election today is a good sign that the violence will be over. There's been some spits of violence which come in that county. But also, it's a good test for the Electoral Commission. They are working. Let's see what they can do with less commissioners and so on. I hope that this is going to be a good sign for us, that we can actually even reduce commissioners in some of these commissions. If you can do well without the rest, I mean, they can function. But again, Ochilo Ayako has been literally been promoted very much that as the one taunted to be to win this thing. But I wish him well. But also I can see, like my friend from there is saying, seriously, there's a new strong wave to challenge the status quo, which is very good for our democracy.
Thank you. Right. Let's hear from Governor Anyang' Nyong'o. Good morning.
Debarl.
Good to see you.
I think I agree with my colleagues really that Ochilo Ayako has the upper hand in the Migori senatorial elections. I was listening to the voter distribution in the constituencies in Migori.
Yes.
And when I listened carefully, I think that when all is said and done, those constituencies may be lean towards Okech in a minority. If you combine the votes in West and East Korea, assuming a voter turnout of 30% in a by-election, and then you look at voter turnout in the other constituencies, supposing you say that Uriri will go with East and West Korea, still a 30% average, it gives a high chance for the other constituencies to elect Ochilo Ayako. I mean, if we assume that that's the way the constituencies are going to go. So I think all is said and done, I think Ochilo Ayako is going to carry the day.
All right, so we eagerly await to see what will be happening there as well. And as I've mentioned, we'll have our reporters down on the ground, and they will be giving us, updates on how that will be turning out in Migori. We have our reporter Seto Lale, also have Bernard Ojwang and also Okisa, who are in Migori. Okukusa, who is in Migori, to give us live to live, and that is wall-to-wall and wire-to-wire live coverage of this particular by-election in Migori. But we want also to see how the political tone and tenor was last week, especially on what we are talking about this morning, the referendum. And here is just some of the bites that we collected for you, just to give you a feel and flavor of what happened last week as far as the referendum debate is concerned.
Kama referendum ni mambo ya vyeo na viongozi wasahau. Kama referendum ni ya wananchi, vile tutaondoa umaskini, vile tutapanua nafasi ya kazi, waende wapange watuletee. Lakini kama ni maneno hii ya ukora ya kusema ati fulani apate kiti fulani, sijui fulani apate cheo fulani, hiyo watafute watu wajinga kupelekea hiyo maneno.
Just 1 year after a general election, surely, if somebody were to, a visitor was to come here, or somebody lands from outer space, you think that we are doing elections in December.
We have only implemented this constitution for only 8 years. It is my humble view that it is not yet time to review the structures of our government.
Sisi tunajua Raila anatafuta anafikiri watabadilisha haraka, walete kiti ya prime minister, wagawane mamlaka.
Na ikiwa tunataka tusikizane ni nini kinatukumba, basi sisi wote tuketi kwa meza na tujadiliane. Kanisa liwe pale, civil society iwe pale, wanasiasa wawe pale, wafanyabiashara wawe pale, vijana, wakina mama, wote tuhusike.
The question should not be if we should amend this constitution. It is what and when and how. And this is where the focus should be.
Having tested even the devolved systems, even us, we have issues that we feel that instead of being addressed in law, they should be addressed in the constitution.
If we were to do away with the entire parliament, let's just say we have a new system of government, a new system of democracy where we don't have to have representative democracy through parliament, we would only save the 30 to 35 billion shillings that we have appropriated to parliament this particular year. So in 5 years, we'll be talking about 150 billion shillings. Our problems are not 30 billion shillings a year.
Right, we want just to hear from our panelists this morning to act as a segue to our discussion this morning on that particular debate on referendum. Before we cross over now to Migori, where we understand also Seth Olale is standing by just momentarily. We'll get a feel and flavor of that. I think we should cross over to Migori right now because that is what is happening freshly right now on the ground, to just get a feel and flavor of that before we come back to our panelists this morning. Let's hear from Seth Olale and get to hear what is happening. Good morning, Seth. Good to see you. How are you?
How are you, Debarl? Good morning from Migori County.
Give us a feel and flavor of what is happening right now. Voter turnout at the break of dawn. Are they coming out in force?
Well, actually, as is right now, it's quite impressive because as from 6 a.m. when all the polling stations in Migori County opened opened their doors for this historic by-election, registered voters started streaming in as early as from 6 a.m. And right now we're just at one of the polling stations. This is at Muslim Primary School in Migori County. It has about 3,500 registered voters, and as from 6 a.m. voters started coming to this particular place. The IBC officials were also ready to welcome each and every voter, and right now we'll just try to get a feel of what actually has been happening since 6 a.m. the normal queuing, but what we've just witnessed, there's not so long queues as of any general election, because remember that this is just one candidate, one ballot box in that particular room behind me. I'll just try and interact with some of these particular voters. Boss, kama tunaweza tuzungumza nawe kidogo, hebu tueleze tu kwa majina waitwa nani? Tuko kwa NTV moja kwa moja.
Mimi naitwa Elijah Nyuma. Mimi napiga kura kwa Migori Municipal, Migori Muslim Primary School.
Uliweza kuamka saa ngapi?
Nikuja hapa saa 12. Bado tuko hapa, naona kura naendelea mzuri.
Tafadhali angalia penye unapiga
kura. Sasa kuna maneno, kuna vita yoyote. Sasa baadaye utaona nani utaenda.
Okay, whoever is just speaking is the presiding officer, and he's urging all the voters who are coming here that just to clarify and to counter check on the register list and to make sure that this is the particular place where they registered earlier on in last year's elections. And we'll just get inside the room, and we have the exercise already ongoing. As you can have, we see one of the voters. What is being done right now is just a biometric verification, after which they're also going to counter check her list in the register list, the official voters register. After that, of course, she will be given that particular slip that has the candidates, all the 6 candidates lined up, and she will also have to produce her identification card, which already she has, and they just counter checking to make sure that all is in place, that this is the right person who is voting. A very vigorous exercise as it stands. We haven't noticed any hitches as far as the biometric system and also the register voters. Everything seemingly is just going on smoothly. And you can see there we have the presiding officer, the deputy presiding officer, that at least allowing 2 voters each per session. And what's going on in over 800 centers that have been, lined up here in Migori County for this historic senatorial by-election. This is an exercise that started at 6 a.m. across all the registered polling centers. Migori Muslim Primary School is just one of them, and this is what we talked about yesterday with the commissioner, IBC Commissioner Professor Abdi Guli, and he said that they're not expecting, any sort of hitches, they're not expecting any sort of delays in terms of system functionality and also the voter turnout. So as it stands, we have voters who've been able to come out of their houses as early as from 6 a.m. They just want to, finish off with this particular business as early as possible so that they can just go and do whatever they usually do during the day. Some are saying that it is business as usual. They're going to go to their farms, they're going to go to their workplaces, they're going to go to school, those who are studying, and it is better for them, in their opinion, to start this as early as possible. So what you're seeing is just one of the voters here registered here at Muslim Primary School, just making his decisive moment of choosing among the selected and the registered and the qualified candidates for this senatorial by-election. We are being informed, as we talked yesterday with Ruth Kulundu, who's actually the county returning officer, and she said that they are expecting results to come out as from 2 a.m. That is on Tuesday after today, and so it will be quite some intrigues, it will be quite some thrilling moments at the county Migori Teachers Training College, which is the official county tallying center, and that is where we expect all the candidates to line up later. And talking about the candidates that just lined up and very clearly indicated in that particular slip, we have Peter Oseko Jabondo, who is of the Green Party. Also we have George Ochilo Ayako Mbogo, and this is a candidate for AODM. We also have Dixon Ogola. Dixon Ogola is with the Enlighter AIND, and we also have Eddie Gisheru Okech. Eddie represent FPK, that is the Federal Party, and that is just but a few. And so this is an exercise that is going on in not only this particular place, but also other polling stations, and definitely Debarl in our subsequent bulletins will also be highlighting what is going on elsewhere. Remember, there are 8 constituencies in Migori County. We have over 388,000 registered voters who today they will be making their decisive moment in choosing a new senator following the unfortunate demise of the then Senator Ben Oloch in June. Back to you, Debarl.
Many thanks indeed. Seth Olale there reporting from Migori, and of course it seems all things are sewn up for success as far as that by-election is concerned. And we'll be crossing over to other of our reporters who are on the ground much later in the course of the day, and of course we shall be giving you a wall-to-wall, wire-to-wire coverage of what is happening on the ground this day of the by-election to actually try and fill up that seat of the senatorial seat in Migori County as well. We want to take a short break right now. When we circle back, of course, we continue pace with the conversation with the panelists who are here. This is all about referendum. And of course, we shall be also keeping a keen eye on what is happening in Migori as well. Don't go away. Hit us on Twitter. Live NTV is a Twitter handle. Live NTV is a profile name on Facebook. And 20686 is our SMS portal. This is the point here on AM Live, and I'm holding court this morning with Senator Okongo Omogeni from Nyamira. We do have as well the Governor of the Rakanithi. This is Mudomi Njuki. We do have with us the Senator of West Pokot as well, Samuel Pugisu, also Dr. Shemo Chodho, who's a global leader of Kenya Diaspora Alliance, and the Governor of Kisumu, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o. Gentlemen, just let's continue with the conversation on the referendum. And looking at what we have on page 2 of the Star today, the editorial cartoon, if we begin with you, Mudomi Njuki, what do you think about this particular editorial cartoon? DP Ruto makes his stand on the referendum absolutely clear. There you have it.
Well, I don't know why you threw it to me, and I'm not very good at interpreting cartoons.
Because these shoes, I think they were in your county over the weekend.
I don't know what they mean, but I know that the statement that was made on Saturday by the Deputy President, you know, the media only captures just a little thing that I said, but you know, there was a build-up to the same. There has been this clamor for change the constitution, and of course it's brought like a double-edged sword. There are those who say we need to change the constitution to punguza mzigo. But at the same time, there are others who see it as a sugar-coated bitter pill, where the main aim of wanting to change the constitution is to create positions for those who are in perpetual loss in the preceding elections, where it has been, of course, alleged that the people who want to have the positions that could take up for losers in the main elections, because that is what usually brings dissatisfaction that divides the country, where some people feel that the winner usually takes all. While previously we used to have a system where you were allowed to contest for the high office while still having a position of representation in the assembly, either in the Senate or the National Assembly. But as it was at the moment, the system agitates for winner takes it all, which is a big problem. Now, should we be going back to referendum when the Wanjiku is feeling so much weight on an economic, in the status of the economy of this country, when there is so much going on that has really made her life difficult in terms of what she can be able to afford and what she can't be able to afford. So to be able to balance that, it's a very difficult task, and that is why the Deputy President said, if really those who are agitating for change the constitution are doing it for the good of the common monarch, then he has no issues, and it should not be mistaken as if those who are saying it is too soon to have a referendum, it should not be mistaken as if they are fearing an election. It is not fear of election, it's only that we are saying that it should be change the constitution drive that will benefit the monarchy, but not being used as a platform to launch political, to launch politics for 2022. Because it is very common.
It's very common.
Yes.
All right, back maybe to the cartoon. This change of tone, Okongo Omogeni, what are you reading? Is he speaking from both sides of the mouth? The Deputy President?
Yeah,
there you have it on the screen.
I think Debarl, the Deputy President, I think, is left with no choice. And I think he's just being a wise politician who can read the mood in the country. I think the mood in the country is not a push to change constitution to reward particular individuals, the way the DP wants to portray. The debate that we're having is to change the constitution to make the government be a bit lean so that we can save taxpayers' money, we drive more resources towards development. But I think the person who is trying to introduce politics in this is the DP himself. And I think he's having that perception that the clamor for changing the constitution is going to put a threat to his candidature for 2022. And he thinks that if we change the system of government and introduce the parliamentary system, then that puts brake on his plans to ascend to the president in 2022. But I want to urge the DP and his supporters to look at the bigger picture. Who knows? Even if we were to create that position on the DP of a prime minister, maybe he may one time be a beneficiary. I think for now, for me, what should guide our debate is to focus on the bigger picture. What really do we want to change in the constitution that we have? And even you look around the debate of the central government and devolved government, you know, we're having a parallel system of government at the county level. We maintain the provincial administration, while on the other hand, we have the devolved units. How does it become an issue of 2022 when we're having a debate on how should we appoint our cabinet secretary? Should we retain the current system where we pick them from outside parliament, or should we revert to a system where we pick them from parliament? The number of commissions we have, should we still retain the number at 9, or should we reduce it? You had, I think, Senator Pogisho point out this morning that IBC with just 9 commissioners is having the task of running the Migori by-election. So I want to urge the DP
with 3 commissioners.
With
not
3 commissioners.
Yes, yes, not 9.
With 3 commissioners, not 9. With 3 commissioners. So I think the debate is in the best interest of this country. It's not about rewarding people who are in the cold. It's about having a system of government that can be supported by our economy, that does not take all the money from development, and which is of benefit to the people of Kenya.
Thank you. Senator Pogisho, on this, what do you think, looking at that particular editorial cartoon?
Debarl, I like the design of the shoes.
Not the happy socks?
You can walk either way. I mean, nobody can know where you're going.
Without changing gear.
But the truth is that there is a script which is being peddled around. And the script is that the attempt to change the constitution is because people want positions. And I think that people want to push that to the maximum, so as to try and create a wedge between the leadership and the Wanjiku that we talk about. For us to reduce the whole thing of reforms into just wanting to change the positions on top, I think is it's really not a message you can sell, because it's not about that. I think what we're talking about is that it's time to relook at our constitution. The people have the power. The supremacy is in the hands of the people. And if they want to look at it and see how to reduce the wage bill, to see how they actually can reorganize government so that it is seamless and works together, to see how to, for example, make sure that the schedules in the current constitutions can be effected very well. To see all these things can come together. But you see, the referendum is not about just one thing. The referendum will bring all this together into a question. And so we're looking forward to actually doing this referendum. And I have no issue with the referendum because we've been there before. We've done referendums before. It's good for the country.
Thank you. Dr. Shemachuodo?
Debarl, I might be a minority in this regard here. I think the talk of referendum is premature.
It's premature?
Yes, premature because the two principles did constitute a 14-member committee, the Build Bridges initiative. But some Kenyans feared that, this is just a thing for 2 people. That seems to be what's emerging. I thought the principles would have let the BBI team go around the country to collect views of Kenyans. This top-down approach and leadership is what has taken us where we are. I think for once, let's allow Kenyans to get the Kenya we want, not the Kenya 2 people or a certain number of leaders want. As Dialogue Contact Group, one of the 5 priority areas we've identified, and that's a multi-sectoral group, is political and electoral reforms. But as to what exactly needs to be reformed is we need to go through a due process. It may or may not entail a referendum. It may or may not entail a constitutional reform. Because if you look at Article 255 of the Constitution, there are items that require a referendum. But there are things, perhaps save for restructuring devolved systems, there are many other things that are being talked about, including structuring of government at the executive national level. That may not require referendum. So this is part of why I want to say, Debarl, that I think the referendum talk for me is a diversion. there are more critical things that Kenyans are facing, are dealing with at now. But more importantly, for heaven's sake, let's allow it to be bottoms up for once. So that would be my position.
Right. Professor, also you mentioned from your article over the weekend on the Star, debate on constitutional review should be structured. And you say, I hope the debate on the review of the constitution is not going to be cacophonous.
To become cacophonous?
Yes.
What I meant is that, you know, on the Tower of Babel, you know,
yes,
everybody's speaking, no agenda, everybody's shooting from the hip. It will not help. And I think Senator Kongo Mogeni is right. Debating the constitutional reform is not debating positions. That's making it very cheap. Debating constitutional reform is doing exactly what the Commission for the implementation of the Constitution was doing. You remember the Commission existed about 3 or 4 years after the Constitution came into being? I wish it had lasted longer, because the Commission's mission was to make sure that the Constitution was implemented by the new government, okay? I think its mandate could have been expanded and say, as the Constitution is implemented, what aspects of the Constitution are found to be problematic and what should be done? Then the Commission could actually dovetail into what building bridges now is. You remember the American Constitution for the first 5 years was amended drastically. The original Constitution didn't even have a Bill of Rights, you see. So that we have only taken 8 years is not an excuse for us not to look at our Constitution. Indeed, it's a reason for us to do so before it gets too late. My point is, let us structure the discussion. In some ways, I agree with Shamo Chodam. If indeed the building bridges exercise, one of its agenda is to look at the Constitution and the extent to which it is responding to the needs of Kenyans for good governance, then let it come out very clearly and lead the debate. But that doesn't mean that people are gagged from talking. I don't think in a democracy you can do that. People must continue talking about the Constitution and making proposals. But then there must be a receptacle receiving these proposals and finally coming out with what they think are the main issues that should lead to the amending the Constitution or reforming it, and in what ways. As far as I'm concerned, and I've written about this many years, even before the Constitution came into being. I used to write for The Nation, then I wrote for The Standard, now for The Star. And I know if I could collect these articles talking about what kind of Kenya we want, I've always believed, and I still believe, that a parliamentary system of government is the best for this country, for many reasons, very many reasons. One, being a diverse, pluralist society, a presidential system is the worst. Because if one ethnic community captures the presidency, the rest are doomed. And you have seen that since independence. Elites try to gang up and put the ethnic community in power and then consign the others to limbo. This is not democracy. It's not inclusiveness either. So you find a system which is much more plural, which is much more inclusive. And that's it, parliamentary. Look at India, very diverse society, parliamentary. Britain itself, parliamentary. Canada, Singapore, Malaysia. And they're all countries which have gone parliamentary, whether old or new, have done much better in terms of development than otherwise. Even the American presidential system was tampered very heavily with parliamentary principles. The president has to consult very widely in order to get through his policies in the Senate. The trouble with Trump is that he doesn't want to consult. This is why he's asking the Americans. He wants to sit in the White House and dictate. I mean, the Americans can't take that. So, look, if we open ourselves to these issues, let's discuss issues, not personalities. Yes. Let's discuss issues, not personalities, not Raila Amolo Odinga, Ruto, no. In any case, these are a tiny speck in the history of Kenya. In the next 100 years, children born 50 years from today will only remember the institutions that were built and the individuals responsible for those institutions. You see what I mean? So the institution of democracy, of inclusiveness, of development, of national unity, what kind of political system will guarantee us democracy, development, and national unity? Obviously, the presidential system has not guaranteed us national unity, if we go by our history. How many people were assassinated in the 60s to safeguard the presidency? And subsequently, this doesn't reflect inclusiveness and national unity, not at all. If you look at Rwanda, for example, okay, Rwanda is not a parliamentary democracy, but it's scoring much higher in development than us because it's more consultative. It's much more consultative from the base upwards. But ours is a presidential system, which is very least consultative. If anything, it has to stifle consultative institutions. MPs are delivered in a basket to State House, and the decisions are made, and they come back and implement those decisions. Is that consultation? No. So I think we should look at these issues very carefully and not dogmatically dismiss this thing as a contest between two individuals. No, that's not the issue.
All right, and of course, we have two issues which are running parallel here. The Building Bridges initiative, as you mentioned, and now we have the referendum itself. We have the 9 points agenda, and the question that is really coming to the fore is, what will be the ultimate question that will be on the referendum? Should we now piggyback on what is happening with the Building Bridges initiative, with the 9-point agenda, because it has, in a way, really encapsulated what Kenya is really ailing from, you know, looking from the electoral systems, ethnicity, issue of inclusivity as well. I don't know, what will be your thought as well, Senator Okongo Mogeni? First of all, do you concur with, or do you agree or hold with his view that this referendum is premature? What Shem is saying, is it premature?
Personally, I don't think it's premature. It's, as Professor Nyang' Yong has said, the Americans, after they passed their constitution in 1776, they didn't close themselves into a box and say, now we have had a new constitution, we can never amend this constitution. In fact, in 1794, they had the first major amendments of the American Constitution. So these are very good debate. And then, you know, let's learn from the mistakes we have made in the past. What I saw in 2010 is, you know, the same debate here, where you say that let's cross out elected political leaders from key decisions like, you know, enacting a new constitution for a country. And you remember that the committee of experts was given the, you know, almost exclusive mandate to come up with the final draft. And members of parliament made tremendous effort to amend that constitution on the floor, but the law that we had enacted that was guiding the process made it impossible for elected leaders to amend the constitution. And I don't think we should close ourselves into a box and say, now that we have the building initiative in place, then we should lock out political leadership from this debate. I think for me, Debarl, what we need to do is let's leave this open. The people of Kenya, if you read Article 256, even if you want to amend this constitution, there is enough constitutional framework for the people of Kenya to be consulted before finally we throw that question into the referendum. So let the leadership be a very key stakeholder in this process. Number two, whatever avenues we put in place, whether it's through the initiative by the President and the Prime Minister, whether we want to allow Parliament through the committee to lead the process. Finally, what Professor Nyang' Yong has put on the table, let us look at a system that will give the Kenyan people a constitution that will be proud of for generations to come. If we agree on that approach, then we'll reduce the political temperatures. Because what I'm seeing from the DP is obsessed with this feeling that when we touch any issue touching on amending this constitution, we are endangering his chances of becoming a president in 2022. If that can sink in and he appreciates that this is in the best interest of Kenya as a country, we should be able to pull together and find a middle ground in this process.
Right. Let's hear from Governor Muthoni Njuki.
Debarl, there will never be a perfect constitution at one particular point in time. Even if we were to amend it today, we'll still have a proportion of Kenyans who will say they were not satisfied with the one that is being popularly proposed as per se. So saying that we'll reach a time when we say all Kenyans are happy, we will be lying to ourselves. Secondly, Debarl, on the issue of when is the right time for the referendum and what exactly do we have to put in the referendum, something at the moment I think we have put the cart ahead of the horse, because we're just beating the bush around it in terms of just thumping. There are people who want to change the constitution, the others who don't want to change the constitution. But we have not come down to tell the Kenyans, the common mwananchi, what is this that in this constitution that is so bad that we want to change? And I like it when my colleague Professor Nyang'o says one of the things they would like to change is the presidential system of governance and institute the parliamentary system. It is important to tell the Kenyans what exactly it entails in this particular case. Which parliament are we talking about? We have talked about this, the parliament that is normally bought for 10,000 shillings when there's a crucial decision to be made. These are the same system we want to say we love a system where the president of this country is elected by a vote in parliament. Then you'll be denying Kenyans an opportunity to be able to make a decision on the ballot box. There has to be ways we can have checks and balances to ensure that this nation is not paralyzed on those ethnic lines that people normally vote along. Not necessarily denying the Kenyan voters that right to be able to make a decision by themselves. And at the end of the day, I have had so many politicians link this change constitution to particular quarters. It is not a secret that every time this change the constitution is discussed, the name of William Ruto, the name of Raila Odinga comes into play. It is because, of course, at the end of the day, even after we have changed the constitution, there will be an election. Then people are asking themselves, what would politicians want to sneak in that is going to favor the end results of the 2022 election? That is why you can hear the name popping in here and there. But look at the history of this country. When we have had referendums twice in the near past, as I remember. There's a time we had the issue of the banana and the orange. Is it obvious that it is during that referendum push that the Orange Democratic Party was born?
Not really.
It is that time. And that is the origin of the Orange Democratic Party, okay. Out of what came out of the push for the referendum that time of the orange and the banana. And it is therefore true, and let us not hide our heads in the sand when we say that we do not have politicians who want to use this referendum as a yardstick to measure which way to go, what is their popularity at the moment on the ground using the referendum. And that is what we are saying, that if that happens, we are taking Kenyans for a ride, because we will go through a very expensive process, just not really to deliver to the mwananchi, but to measure the popularity of some politicians. I know some politicians sometimes, that's why they call politics. They like to sugarcoat it and make it look like this is really for the mwananchi. But I haven't had mwananchi complain so much about some of the things we are complaining about. Mwananchi is complaining about the cost of fuel. They are complaining about the cost of unga, the cost of sugar, the quality of the sugar. Are those things that we should be addressing through the change the constitution? Those are things that can be addressed without having to talk about change the constitution to be able to probably bring in more positions on the top, and below there reduce the number of constituencies and reduce the number of counties. When you say reduce the number of counties, how do you convince the mwananchi? How do you convince the Tharaka-Nithi people to go back to Meru and Em County and become one eastern province? That make any sense?
All right, let's say from the custodians of the counties, then how do we reduce these counties? You can hear from Senator Pogisio.
Thank you, Debarl. You know, people need to know, as I said before, it's the people who are supreme in this country. It's the people through their representatives or even directly, and so we listen to them. And when you listen to them, you hear. Just to differ a bit with my colleague, the governor here, the symptoms that we're talking about, you know, sugar and so on, those are just symptoms of a deeper problem. It's the deeper problem that must be addressed in the Constitution. What is the cause of all that? There must be some leadership alignments that might be required, but not in terms of personalities, but in terms of institutions. So let's look at our institutions. And you know, there's been talk about, for example, too many institutions, too many commissions, too many very highly paid people in this country. The wage bill is going to go. Those are the symptoms. I mean, the poor the poor people in the countryside, in the counties, you know, they have been taxed so many times. They still have problems getting services, and yet we had thought that the devolved form of government would be good for them, which is it's not too bad, but it can be reformed. It might even benefit the governors more, because we want a bigger reform. We like to see a lot of resources go to the counties. How do you do that? You must do that with some kind of referendum. And I'm not saying that the referendum is tomorrow either. You see, nobody is really putting a date to the referendum. The idea is there that we must listen to our people when they say punguza mzigo or those kind of things, punda mechoka and so on. Those are not from us. Those are things which come from the wananchi. And when you look at people, especially in the far-flung areas of our country, who really don't get to read the newspapers, they don't watch TV and so on, their voice is coming out saying, you guys, we need something to be done so that we get relief. And how do we do that? We must look at the wage bill. We must look at changes in various ways. And again, Debarl, it is about people deciding which way they want to go. They might say there's no referendum, or there is a referendum, but at least we know the discussion going on right now is they think there are parts of our constitution which needs to be reformed so that we can get a seamless transition into a situation where our country makes progress. My fear is a lot of people think that the things we are enjoying now, which is projects which we are enjoying now, means development. No. I mean, are those too many projects that we are doing now, are they really development? When the Big Four comes without a reform, is it possible for wananchi to embrace it? And the wananchi are saying, is this still part of the pressure to make life more expensive for them? So I do agree that that maybe it's not tomorrow, maybe it is the next year, or maybe it's the year with the election year itself. But let's talk about it. Let's not make it look like, simplifying it is a problem. Making it look too simplistic, as if it's about two people. I don't agree with that either. Right. It's from the people themselves.
Right, but let's look at the cost implications. I can see Dr. Shemo Chodo, you have something to say before we come to the cost implications?
Yeah, Debarl, actually, yes, before you leave the shoes, I just thought that...
the shoes, if I'll go back to the shoes.
If this actually came from the DP, yes, I must say it must be very innovative, and we need innovation to move the country forward. And the colors look like URP colors, so it's not a bit surprising. But Debarl, I think in terms of what really hurts Kenyans most, at Dialogue Contact Group, we've tried to speak to a cross-section of Kenyans, of course, not as exhaustive as it should be, but three things stick out to be our major undoing. The first one is impunity. 2 is corruption. 3 is ukabila. And for me, if you ask me, those are the 3 priorities we need to address. What I'm hearing about the referendum talk, to a large extent, yes, do not, in fact, there are things that we can fix, even with the current constitution. I must say that we have one of the best constitutions. It's not perfect, as no constitution is perfect. But I really wish that in the short term, some of these low-lying fruits, or what government prefers to call rapid results initiative, there could be some quick wins that we could see a sign that we are bringing the country together. And a good number of them, I must admit, were captured in the 9-point agenda of President Kenyatta and Prime Minister Odinga. Those 9 points, there are a number that can be addressed. If you look at that Article 255, what needs to go to the referendum? It says the supremacy of the Constitution. We are not talking about that. The Treaty of Kenya, we are not talking about that. Sovereignty of the people, the national values and principles of governance, the Bill of Rights, the term of office of president, the independence of the judiciary, and lastly, objects and principles of structured devolved systems. So clearly, none of, other than, and I was saying, unless we are talking of the devolved systems, the structure. And in my view, I recall for the devolved systems, we spend about 300 billion. It's a small fraction, really. So the burden, when we talk of punda imechoka, in as much as we need to restructure government, even at the devolved levels, for me, the major focus would be that 90% that goes to the national government. So, and that can be resolved without necessarily a referendum. So, but again, I'm saying I'm not averse to a referendum. It may be necessary. In March 2017, the Mutava Musimi Committee, they did a review of the Constitution. They looked at the cost of implementation of the Constitution, the audit. But that audit didn't go far enough. We need an audit. As DCG, our position is that let's do a comprehensive audit. Let's see what part of this Constitution works, which part doesn't work. And bearing in mind people-centeredness. Then we decide 1, 2, 3, we can't, there are 100 things to be changed, but we can't do all. What are the top priorities? But I'm averse to politicians setting those priorities for the people.
All right. Debarl, Dr. Chodon mentions national values. It's very important.
True.
Because deciding whether you want a presidential system or parliamentary system is a national value. Let me ask you, since independence, what has the presidential system cost Kenyans in terms of development, in terms of national unity, in terms of democracy? Were you to do an objective analysis of what the presidential system has cost Kenyans, you'll find that the system has cost Kenyans a great deal. Opportunities for development have been lost because of this system. Right from independence, all these white elephants, projects that never took off, that added to the national debt that we are paying up to today. It's a lot of money because of this system, which was based on lack of accountability and impunity. If you look at national unity, I mentioned it, the number of people who have been assassinated or killed to maintain presidential authoritarian system anchored on tribalism has made national unity very difficult in this nation. If you look at democracy, in the 6th and 7th, those of us who struggle for the second liberation know what it is that we're struggling for. And now that we have this constitution, which has opened the democratic space, definitely, but not guaranteed democratic national unity. So when we are discussing about parliamentary system and presidential system, these are the issues you should address. Let us not talk about it in a cheap way in terms of whether the Mwananchi is worrying about the price of sugar and so on. A bigger issue, what makes the price of sugar, petrol, so on go up every day? Because of the national debt, arrived at through projects which were conceived after too much kickbacks. Decision made behind closed doors by few people. So these are the things that must be brought to the fore when we're debating national values of what kind of system that we want in this country. I want the debate to be out there. I don't want it to be gagged, because if you begin debating, you are conspiring to have your person elected in 2022. That's cheapening the concern for the future of this country. So let's forget about 2022. Let us say, in terms of taking this nation forward, looking at the history of this nation since independence, is this what we should be content with, or there's more that we can do? And I say there's more that we can do. Through honest debating, without dogma, without tyranny. You see, those of us who confine ourselves to 2022, bring in tyrannical language. Yeah? The tyrannical language you says, oh, those who want the referendum are conspiring for their man to be. No, that's tyranny. We're not conspiring for anything. We're debating issues we have debated for a long time, given the history of this country.
And so we need to uncouple the whole debate about referendum and the 2022 politics.
Yeah.
And this is the noise, the cacophony that you're talking about.
Exactly.
That we hear the clamor for 2022 and we don't hear the ultimate voice of referendum in this.
Yes.
But let me ask you, Prof, also because you are actually contending for presidency, for the parliamentary system as opposed to the presidency, right? But you say that MPs nowadays don't think. Right?
I didn't say they didn't think. No.
It does not.
That would be
okay, let me not misquote you.
No.
Let me just read it, what you said. Yeah. You said it does not really matter what MPs think. It does not really matter what they think.
Yes,
yeah?
exactly.
It does not. Okay. Yeah. They can easily be herded into one basket and delivered to the president.
But we saw it with the Jubilee the other day.
We saw it with Jubilee.
Yeah,
they were herded into one basket.
Before they went to State House, they were saying all kinds of things. When they came out of State House, they were quiet. I mean, really, what happened?
So what discernible difference will we have then when we have this parliamentary system, that we have MPs who have no say?
No. Oh. That's why I gave you the example of Britain.
Yes.
Where you have a parliamentary system. It's very difficult to gag British MPs on both sides of the divide because they are responsible for their constituents. And the constituency Labour Party and the constituency Conservative Party is very strong. before you open your mouth in Parliament, you rush back to your constituency and discuss with your caucus in the constituency. What do you people in Lancashire, I think, I should do? Then you go there and articulate their interest in that particular issue. For example, Brexit. You find MPs from either side of the divide, Labour or Conservative, holding views different from their leaders and expressing it very strongly. And that is where you get a better deal for Britain regarding Brexit, rather than this mentality being had in a basket and live and then you change your mind. That is, Britain gives you a much fairer glimpse into what democracy really means in a parliamentary system than ours, definitely.
Okay, let's try and look at the cost implications. Congo Mogini, looking at the standard, at least is giving you a snippet of what this will cost according to Chebukati, and I thought that will have actually gone to $1 billion. But looking at what is on the front page of the standard, I just walk over there just to try and show it to you what it really holds. Around the 12 billion shillings that this particular exercise will cost us. Where will you get the money? That will be the question. And of course, we are not projecting this that will happen tomorrow, but in the next maybe 2022, it can really go in tandem with the elections of that particular year as well.
But we are very cautious about Chebukati's figures.
Yeah, I think first...
cautious about?
About Chebukati's figures.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we shouldn't just buy this figure of 12 billion.
Of Chebukati?
He's given us a figure of 12 billion.
Yes.
He has given us a figure of 12 billion. I don't know how scientific this figure is.
Standard?
I don't know how he arrived at that figure of 12B.
Because so the last time I checked, actually, this exercise was to be, or maybe a ballpark figure of around $1 billion.
Yeah, so I think I agree with the Prof that we shouldn't just be persuaded by this figure of 12B. I think we can still audit how objective this figure of 12B is. I think we can spend much less. But Debarl, you know, if you look at the bigger picture, and maybe I shouldn't go into the details of what you are looking at.
Yes.
But the governor here will tell you that in most of our county governments, the nominees we have in county assemblies is almost the same number as the elected MCAs. And I've had people, I think I saw the debate over the weekend, people saying we should do away with nominated MCAs. In my county of Nyamira, we have elected MCAs are 20. The nominees are 16. And that is costing us money. So if you audit the number of MCAs we have, I think they are about 752, if I'm not wrong. Vis-a-vis how much it costs to maintain each of the MCAs, then 12 billion would really be nothing. But on the system of government, you know the three happiest cities in this world. I mean, that is Melbourne in Australia, Osaka in Japan, and even Vienna. They are all parliamentary system. I mean, the happiest people in the world live in countries which have embraced the parliamentary system. And I remember in 2010, people were pushing the idea that when you have a prime minister, and this could be anybody. I'm not saying if we have a prime minister's position, it will be Raila Odinga or it will be William Ruto. It could even be Governor Muthomi Njuki here. If you have a parliamentary system, then you have a system which places the executive to be more accountable to the elected members of parliament. You know, in Australia, I think for the last 17 years, they have changed their prime ministers 11 times. Because any time they don't live to the expectation of the people, the members of parliament will fire them and bring on board a new prime minister. So the only area where I agree fully with Professor is that the presidency becomes a fairly mysterious character who lives in State House. He will never come to the people's representatives, the elected members, to be put to account, to answer questions on the floor. So is detached from the issues that touch on common Mwananchi, because it's the elected leaders who speak for Mwananchi. So if we interrogate the system of government that we have had since independence, a very imperial presidency vis-a-vis the kind of face we have for prime minister like the UK. The prime minister of UK is not a mysterious, he comes to the floor, he will be asked questions, he will respond. And you feel like, yes, we are holding these leader of ours to account. That's a good debate that we should throw to the people. Let's look at the merits and demerits of this system. And there are a raft of issues. If I was to have a sitting with Dr. Ochodo, there are a number of raft of issues that we can flag out from this 20 constitution. Look at the debate around the so-called provincial administration. I don't know how we call it now. It's under the county commissioner.
Yes.
I don't know how we call it. It used to be provincial administration. We said we'll realign it to the new constitution. We have retained the same provincial administration. I think the only person who was removed was the PC, replaced with the county commissioner. On the other hand, governors here will tell you that they have another system of administration running parallel to the one we have by the... And this is costing us money. So, Ochodo, these are the issues we need to put on the table. It's not this is not about individuals. It's about a system of government that is costing this country a lot of money and that is taking away money that is meant for development. Debarl, we will not be able to achieve these Agenda 4 issues, health for our people, housing for our people, infrastructure, if we don't audit the cost of the 2010 constitution to the people of Kenya. How much it costing in terms of the taxes we raise to run this system of government. Dr. Yes. That is really not about individuals.
It's not about personality.
It's not about personality.
Can I?
Let's just go. We'll come to you. Let's hear from His Excellency Mudhomi Njuki.
Yeah, Debarl, you know, some of the issues that we are really sorting out here, or rather identifying as very thorny issues, are issues that we brought ourselves. When the senator talks about the nominated MCAs, the nominated senators, and of course the members of parliament, you know, it's usually not just nomination to just add the numbers. We passed the gender rule, which all Kenyans are life about. In every organization, in every small thing you do, even employment in Nation and TV, you must have 1/3 being the other gender. Mm-hmm. So in that same constitution that we are hoping to make a change in, then you should be telling Kenyans what shall we do to ensure that we normally have representation of the gender, which can either male be female gender in this particular case, because that is why we normally have the nominations, to ensure that the gender that did not get elected is represented adequately also in the same. And you look at the whole system of elections in Kenya, unless we have some seats that are reserved for a particular gender that does not have a political muscle, then we'll find ourselves in the same situation. The cost of doing the referendum, we should not actually be questioning Chebukati's figures. Reason being,
but Chebukati, they've given us some figures before that were questionable.
Let me finish.
Of bloated quotations as well.
Reason being, we are only looking at what is normally used in that particular day in running this referendum, maybe the preparation. But have you thought about the cost implications of the people who actually campaign in this particular event? Because when you put a country in election mode, the cost is normally beyond even the money that is normally spent. It is in terms of opportunity cost, what is lost. And our biggest fear at the moment is putting a country in election mood, because of course the referendum is elections. When you put the country into election mood as early as the second year after elections, then we are going to be in election mood for the rest of the remainder of the term. Meaning that no meaningful things are going to be done. Instead of people focusing on the big four agenda we're talking about, we'll focus on the referendum, and this country will go crazy with elections for the referendum, which of course will merge with other elections, and for 5 years, Kenya would be nothing but just a political animal in terms of what is going on in the country. What would be the people out there, donors and the partners who want to do, of course, business with Kenya? They'll be saying, let's just wait for this referendum to be over, let's wait for this election to be over. Another 5 years will go, nothing has happened. And we must introduce a very important factor in this debate: time. When is the right time to talk about doing a referendum? As much as we'll say, yes, let's do it, what is the right time? Should we do it now, or should we wait and do it together with the elections, so that we do not have to have two elections, pitting the country in an election mood, and also looking at the cost implications as per se. Today we have only one ballot box in Migori, but I can tell you the cost of opening those 800 polling stations is not less. It's more or less the same, just because it's an election. So let us not pretend that we can simply have an election mood 1 year after elections and look at it as just a normal thing that will not affect the Kenyans. It will affect them by all means possible. So opportunity cost. How much do we gain vis-a-vis what we lose by pushing it to be done at the same time with the other elections?
Will it be cheaper? Will it be costly? Let's say from Senator Pogisio.
Well, the only reason that the referendum debate is coming in, the mood of the election is already set. It is the mood is already there. Debarl, if you look at our politicians every weekend, they already set the mood for 2022, and so it is easier then to ride on that mood for further debate. Every weekend there is talk of 2022, and I think that is what really has brought us to a place where we think it doesn't matter then if we add one more thing to it, and we just carry on with the mood. That mood, unless it is stopped, will continue to bring other debates on board. Secondly, while under this presidential system, it is very possible for people, communities to be completely forgotten. Communities in this country. It's very possible for you to be ignored completely. I mean, if your numbers don't matter, you'll be ignored completely. You'll not get any chance to be part and parcel of a system. But you see, if you brought these things into a parliamentary system, every vote counts within parliament. And even if you came from a smaller community, you will be bound together by something, and you'll get your opportunities to go there. So I think some of us who come from those negligible, those places which have been neglected for many years, and you can even look when you form the cabinet, you can see quickly who gets it. It depends on your strength. It depends on your political muscle. But you see, you remember, under the other, closer to parliamentary system which we had before, where members of parliament could come into cabinet, you could see actually the diversity during that time. There was a Turkana in cabinet, there's a Pokot in cabinet, there was this guy, small tribes in cabinet. But today, you'll think it's a club. But anyway, not to bring out those issues, but those are some of the issues that hurt us in a referendum. That will be addressed. Because impunity, as Shem keeps saying, impunity and ukabila, which is tribalism, or nepotism, need to be attacked. And how do we do that? We must then agree on the laws, on the set of laws that guide us, so that you don't have this issue of even the problem we're talking about, the problem of saying that members of parliament are ferried to some place and brought back. It is again exacerbated by the system, that particular system. And so we need a referendum. We need to think about it. And referendum, by the way, is not to exclude anybody. Referendum is actually a good thing. It's bring ideas together. It's a meeting of minds. And we hope that the participation, if it comes, and comes soon, sooner or later, we should then be ready to bring our people together. Finally, I just want to say that anything we do must bring one Kenya, must have one nation. And that even when we look at the way sometimes we behave with our counties, it's as though we like to think of ourselves as more than a nation. And some county leaderships, it must also be brought into to the center to think you are running a county, but you're part of Kenya. And I like also to see how we can tame some of these grand thefts that happen. Why is it easier to steal under the system? Why is it very easy to steal? I mean, why not? Why are not able to find these resources which are being stolen? And so on.
Debarl, I wanted to say, I see the pro-referendum team struggling to find justification, really, beginning with what Senator Omugen's senior counsel was saying. All that I'm hearing around the table, my take is may or may not require referendum to amend the constitution. Why do I say that? Perhaps if we're going to have the illusion that a referendum and changing the constitution or having a parliamentary system is going to make every vote count, I would say I'm not convinced, because then don't we just look at proportional representation? Because that, for me, is the only way I know that would ensure that every vote counts. For example, today we have the Migori elections. You may find Mheshimiwa Ayako gets 50,000 votes and AD gets 45,000 votes. That 40,000 votes is wasted. It doesn't count much. And it doesn't matter whether we go parliamentary or presidential. By the way, by declaring interest, I personally believe a hybrid system is what's good for Kenya. But that can be a debate for another day. But I wanted to also add that the points that are being raised, for example, my good senior prof was talking about the national values, which appear in Article 10, that the Constitution, the protected sections of the Constitution that must go to the referendum, we don't need, I have not heard anybody contesting the national values. We already have very good values. They talk of principles of good governance, things like patriotism, inclusivity and all. So that, in my view, is not what we're saying we want to change. Because if we needed to change that, then we would require referendum. So the premise is that all we require, in my view, is to implement even the constitution that we have. If we're talking of exclusion, if we're talking of corruption and all these other issues, really even within the premise of the constitution that we have can be implemented. This is part of why I'm saying I see the pro-referendum teams struggling to get reasons. It's like we are doing reverse engineering. Why don't we say, what are our topmost issues that we must tackle? There are 10, what are 1 or 2? Then how do we tackle them? I'm not averse to having a referendum.
Thank you.
But I'm saying let that come out of the need.
Right, thank you. Let's hear finally from Prof. Also, as this will act as your closing remarks.
We could make life easier for Dr. Chud by saying, not a referendum, but a reform.
Right.
A reform.
Thank you.
And a referendum where necessary.
Right.
Because you see, you cannot, where the Constitution says this can only be changed to a referendum, you have to do so. So let's not quibble over words. We want to reform the Constitution. Yeah, sure. I mean, really, sometimes I don't want this to be reduced to high school debate. Yes. You know, reform is better than referendum. That would help us. But in the final analysis, you know, Debarl, even this early election fever, it comes because of the presidential system. You elect a president last 5 years, there's a new one who is not going to be stand again. The day you elect him, you start campaigning. But here, the parliamentary system, that will not happen. No, because you'll be building political parties, try to expand so that in the next election you'll go to majority. So the presidential system has all the hazards necessary for it to go away, by the way. This early campaign business is because of the presidential system. In the US, by the way, the parties, the political parties in the US, have to constrain themselves from having early elections for the presidency. But they never really succeed, you see. So I think that we have enough experience globally, and we have enough experience since independence here in Kenya, to say that the presidential system is not good for us. I think those people who are trying to protect it are looking for reasons which are scrapping at the bottom of the barrel.
Thank you. Right. 30 seconds, Okoma Mogini. 30 seconds as we're winding up. 30 seconds.
Mine is to wish the people of Migori a peaceful election and may the best candidate win.
Thank you. Budomi Njuki, 30 seconds.
Mine is to really ask my fellow politicians in Kenya to think about Wanjiku and not just put the country into a political mood where we have to discuss politics 24/7, 365 for the rest of the remaining term of this particular situation in the country, because it doesn't pay anything, because we're just from elections. Now we're going to another elections of referendum. There'll be other elections. Let's just think about Wanjiku.
Ogisio, 30 seconds.
I hope we do not lose sight of the fight against corruption, impunity, and tribalism through all these other things that are noises which are coming up. I really hope that the focus is back into cleaning up the country and for Uhuru Kenyatta to have a legacy that he can always be proud of.
Thank you. Shemosho, 30 seconds.
Mine, the same, Debarl, let's not do things in reverse gear. Let's identify what's ailing Kenya, and you put it very well. Once we identify those critical issues that are ailing Kenya, how do we fix them? So that the referendum and all doesn't become an end in itself, but a means to an end. So that's my premise.
Right, thank you. And also, I just want to read one or two tweets as we are winding up. We have Obunga Apamo saying the current constitution was an agreement between ODM and PNU. The biggest mistake is having another agreement between NASA and Jubilee. We need a constitution that serves Mwananchi, not the political parties and the elites. There are many of them, but we stop for time. I really want to thank you and thank our panelists this morning for this cogent discussion we've had. And I know this is a developing story. We shall look at it also next week as well. Thank you for your valued company as well. And of course also for you, a viewer. We want just to remind you, yes, that the Migori by-election is ongoing right now. It's underway and our reporters are on the ground. We shall be giving you a wall-to-wall, wire-to-wire live coverage of that in the next 1 hour, just to give you a feel and flavor of how it's panning out on the ground. Thank you very much for your valued company. Living with Us is up next.